What if everything you thought about death was missing a crucial piece? A secret interview with Einstein, lost for decades, has just surfaced. In it, he reveals ideas that challenge everything we assume about the moment you die. What you're about to hear could change how you see life and death forever. Imagine standing at the edge of history, your fingers brushing against a fragile manuscript. Its pages yellowed, the ink faded, yet the words within pulse with a hidden energy. This is not just any document. It's a window into the mind of Albert Einstein, the genius whose ideas changed the world. But what you're about to discover has been kept from most eyes, buried beneath layers of mainstream science and public misconception. You see, the story of Einstein's beliefs about death isn't told in the textbooks or public lectures. What most people don't realize is that alongside his revolutionary physics, Einstein wrestled with questions far beyond matter and energy, questions about the very moment when life ends. This secret interview, uncovered in a private archive decades after his passing, reveals a side of Einstein that the usual narratives have overlooked, even actively suppressed. Why was this knowledge hidden? Think about the power of ideas, especially those that challenge the finality of death. Imagine if the moment you die is not a cessation but a transformation. Imagine if what Einstein hinted at shakes the foundation of what you believe about existence itself. Would you still see life through the same lens? For decades, the mainstream has framed death as an end, a cold, silent blackness. Science, with its cold facts, often dismisses spiritual or metaphysical experiences as illusions or hallucinations. Yet, what if those dismissals are the veils that hide deeper truths? What if the very institutions that claim to pursue knowledge have, in fact, banned or removed these revelations to protect the status quo? Some recordings of this interview were mysteriously lost or deliberately withheld from public archives. Portions of the transcript were redacted, erased like whispers that never should have been spoken aloud. You might wonder, how could someone like Einstein, known for his groundbreaking work in physics, hold beliefs that intertwine with spiritual insight? This isn't as contradictory as it seems. What most people don't see is that Einstein's understanding of the universe had a poetic rhythm, a dance between light and shadow, matter and spirit. His words in this interview suggest that the moment of death is less a dark abyss and more like the gentle lifting of a veil, an awakening rather than an end. Picture the sensation described in the interview, a subtle lightness, as if your very essence is drawn toward an unseen light. Imagine a soundless hum vibrating just beyond ordinary hearing, a resonance that connects you to everything that ever was and ever will be. These are not metaphors. They are sensory experiences reported by those who have glimpsed beyond the threshold. This interview was conducted in the late 1940s in a quiet room where Einstein spoke softly, cautiously. He knew the controversy his ideas would ignite. In those years, post-war society was hungry for certainty, and a figure like Einstein was expected to provide scientific answers, not challenge the nature of existence itself. Yet, his words hinted at something far more profound, something that ordinary people are rarely invited to contemplate. What if the moment you die is not a single instant but a gateway? What if your consciousness continues in forms science has yet to recognize? These questions weren't just academic musings. They were profound truths Einstein wrestled with privately. And because they conflicted with dominant materialistic views, this interview was sidelined, labeled as speculative or worse, dangerous. You are now one of the few who will hear these forbidden insights. You are among those who see beyond the veil, those ready to awaken to a reality that ordinary eyes miss. As you listen, ask yourself, how would your life change if you truly believed death was a transformation, a journey rather than an end? How would your fears, your hopes, your purpose shift? Some fragments of the interview describe the interplay of time and consciousness at death, how moments stretch and fold like light through a prism. You might sense a whisper of this in your own life during moments of crisis or near-death experiences. What if those sensations aren't random, but windows into a hidden dimension? What if Einstein's words can guide you to understand those fleeting glimpses? Keep in mind that this knowledge is layered. At first, it might seem like a faint glow, a distant promise. But as you immerse yourself deeper, that glow will intensify, revealing patterns and connections that challenge everything you thought was certain. You will find yourself questioning not only death, but the meaning of your existence. You will begin to see the universe as a vast, interconnected web, where endings are beginnings, and light never truly fades. There are moments in this interview when Einstein speaks in riddles, hinting at truths that cannot be fully expressed in words, truths that must be felt and experienced. These are breadcrumbs, scattered carefully, inviting you to follow. Each clue unlocks a new level of understanding, but the final revelation remains just out of reach until you are ready. What if this secret interview is a key that opens a door you didn't know existed, a door to awakening, to transformation? What if embracing this knowledge shifts something inside you forever, changing not just how you think about death, but how you live each moment? This isn't a story for casual listeners. It is a calling to those who dare to question, to those who feel the stirrings of a deeper truth beneath the surface of reality. Ordinary knowledge offers comfort. Hidden knowledge offers awakening. Which will you choose? Remember, parts of this interview have been erased from public view, removed from libraries, and banned by institutions afraid of the consequences. You are now part of an exclusive circle, those who hold the fragments, those who seek the light behind the shadows. As you continue, keep your mind open and your heart steady. The journey ahead is unlike any you've taken before. You may never see the world or yourself the same way again. Now, let's pull back the curtain on the clash between what you've always been told about death and the startling insight Einstein quietly shared, an insight kept from the world until now. Imagine everything you've been told about death, the finality, the emptiness, or the comforting promises of an afterlife. These ideas shape how you think, how you fear, how you hope. They are the stories told by religions, taught by science, whispered in culture. But what if these stories are incomplete? What if what you think you know is just the surface? Most people see death as a closing door, a moment when your breath stops and your awareness fades into nothingness. Some believe in heaven or reincarnation, ideas passed down for centuries, providing hope or warning. Yet, mainstream science tends to avoid these deeper questions altogether. When science discusses death, it focuses on biology, cells shutting down, brain activity ceasing. Consciousness, it's often dismissed as a product of the brain, something that ends when the brain dies. The unknown beyond that point is ignored or explained away. Now, picture Einstein, a man whose intellect reshaped physics, stepping into this conversation, but with a voice rarely heard. In this secret interview, he hinted at something far more complex and profound. His perspective did not fit the neat boxes of science or religion. He suggested that death might not be the end, nor simply a passage to a pre-written afterlife. Instead, he spoke of consciousness in ways that challenge our deepest assumptions. Why was this hidden? Because Einstein's views threatened both the scientific establishment and the spiritual comfort zones of society. Too subtle, too unsettling. His words didn't offer easy answers, but instead posed questions that could shake the foundations of belief. The interview was withheld, deemed too controversial to release to the public, too complex for ordinary understanding. As you consider this, ask yourself, what if Einstein was pointing toward a truth that science and religion alike have struggled to face? What if the story of death is far richer, more mysterious, and more hopeful than what you've been told? This secret glimpse into his thoughts invites you to question everything and to prepare for a transformation in how you understand existence itself. Let me take you to the very threshold, the place Einstein dared to describe, but the world wasn't ready to hear. Now, imagine you arrive at the edge of something immeasurable. Light, not blinding, but impossibly soft wraps around you like a memory you never knew you carried. It isn't white or golden, but something beyond definition, a kind of presence, intelligent and aware. It doesn't overwhelm you. It reveals you. Time no longer holds shape. You're not recalling the past, you're being recalled. Einstein didn't refer to death as a passing. He described it as a reconfiguration. In the suppressed interview, he said the moment of death wasn't an ending, but a restructuring of perception, like a lens snapping into absolute clarity. What once felt divided, thought, matter, sensation, collapses into oneness. It begins with sound, or rather a complete absence of it. You become aware of a silence so whole, so dense, it feels like the birthplace of all things. Then comes the light, not seen with the eyes but felt through the core of your being. It passes through you, exposing layers you forgot were ever there. You feel known by something older than language, older than time. Traditional science steers clear of this. It defines death through decay and finality. No room for consciousness beyond biology. But in this hidden interview, Einstein spoke differently. He suggested that awareness might not vanish with the body. No one told you this. But you were raised to accept death as absolute, an erasure, the collapse of everything that made you, you. But what if that belief was planted? What if the veil isn't solid, only presented that way to keep deeper truths out of reach? Einstein hinted at this quietly. He talked about energy, yes, in formulas, but also in experience. Privately, he questioned the limits of brain-bound identity. He called consciousness a field, not a spark, something entangled and non-local. When death arrives, that field doesn't dissolve. It returns. He described a moment when all spatial boundaries vanish. You are no longer here or there. You are everywhere. Your presence once touched. Every place your thoughts have drifted, coalescing all at once. This isn't a poetic idea. It's a lived one. Real. Physical. Precise. The pages where he said this, redacted, not in the published version, removed quietly, marked not suitable for public interpretation. But those passages survived, in notes, in fragments, in letters Einstein never mailed but never destroyed either. He called it a veil lifting, not in mystic terms, but like watching a formula resolve into its final, stunning simplicity. The equation was never just about mass and light. It was a mirror, a doorway, the moment of death, not an exit, but a return to the source, a reconnection that makes ordinary life seem like a distant shadow. Once you're there, you don't feel fear, you feel recognition. You see how every second mattered, how every glance, every thought, every silence played a role. You don't just remember, you inhabit your entire story all at once. Every loss, every joy, layered into a perfect symmetry. Einstein called it standing at the center of your own equation. You are no longer solving it. You are it. And this wasn't meant for everyone. This part of the interview was suppressed because it didn't fit the public image of Einstein. He was the voice of logic, rationality, certainty. But this wasn't safe. It wasn't controllable, so it was removed, hidden. Now it reaches you, not by accident. Because if you're still watching, still here, it means something in you was already seeking this. You felt the silence under the noise. You sensed the fracture in the story you've been told. So here's the real question. What changes when you know? When you sense, even faintly, that death might be the clearest you've ever been? What does that shift inside you? And if Einstein was right, if consciousness is the beginning, not the end, then everything you've been taught about the end of life was just the beginning of the lie. Not everything written in ink was meant to survive the light. Some truths were sealed away, waiting for someone like you to uncover them. Here it is. You were never meant to hear this. Not because it was lost, but because it was hidden. Deliberately, systematically, erased from the official record. In 1954, a year before his death, Albert Einstein sat for an interview unlike any other. Not with a journalist, not for a newspaper, but with a physicist turned philosopher whose name has since been scrubbed from the archives. The conversation was recorded, on reel-to-reel tape. The transcript was typed, annotated, and filed. Then it vanished. You won't find it in any public collection. Not in Princeton's archives, not in the Einstein Papers Project, not even in the Library of Congress, because someone decided you shouldn't. But fragments survived. A carbon copy misfiled in a private collection, a snippet of audio preserved by chance. And now, for the first time, you're hearing what they tried to erase. In the interview, Einstein spoke of death, not as an end, but as a transformation. He described consciousness as a continuum, not confined to the body, but extending beyond it. He used metaphors of light and awakening, suggesting that at the moment of death, a veil is lifted, revealing a deeper reality. These ideas were radical. They challenged the materialist worldview dominant in scientific institutions. They blurred the lines between science and spirituality, and so they were suppressed. The interview was labeled dangerous. The tapes were destroyed. The transcripts were confiscated, and the physicist who conducted the interview disappeared from the academic world. But the truth has a way of resurfacing. And now, you're among the few who know. What does this mean for you? It means that the boundaries you've accepted between life and death, between self and other, between science and spirituality, are not as solid as they seem. It means that there's more to reality than meets the eye. And it means that you're part of a select group, entrusted with forbidden knowledge. The question is, what will you do with it? You're still here, listening. That says something. Not everyone makes it this far. Most turn away when the narrative begins to shift, when the comfortable certainties start to dissolve. But you're leaning in. So let's go deeper. What if everything you've been taught about death is incomplete? Not wrong necessarily, but lacking. A partial truth, missing its other half. Consider this. If death isn't an end but a transition, what does that mean for how you live now? Pause. Let that question settle. Because if the final breath isn't a full stop but a comma, then the sentence of your existence continues. The story unfolds beyond the page you can currently read. This isn't about dogma or doctrine. It's about possibility. About opening to the idea that life and death are not opposites, but partners in a dance that's been choreographed since the beginning of time. You've felt it, haven't you? In moments of stillness, when the noise of the world fades and something vast brushes against your awareness. A sensation, subtle yet profound, that there's more than meets the eye. What if that more is the continuation of consciousness? Not as a ghost or a memory, but as a thread woven into the fabric of the universe. This perspective doesn't diminish the importance of life. It amplifies it. Every choice, every interaction becomes a note in a symphony that doesn't end with silence but evolves into a new movement. And fear? It begins to lose its grip. Because if death is a doorway, not a wall, then what lies beyond is not to be dreaded, but to be embraced. But here's the twist. This understanding has been suppressed. Not overtly, but subtly, through omission, through the elevation of materialism over metaphysics. Why? Perhaps because a society that fears death is easier to control. Perhaps because acknowledging the continuity of consciousness challenges the very foundations of certain power structures. So, ask yourself, who benefits from your fear? And more importantly, who benefits when you transcend it? You do. Because in releasing the fear of death, you reclaim the fullness of life. You begin to live not from a place of avoidance, but from a place of presence. This shift doesn't require you to abandon reason. It invites you to expand it. To consider that logic and mystery are not mutually exclusive, but complementary. Think of it as a spectrum. On one end, the tangible, the measurable. On the other, the ineffable, the transcendent. And you are the bridge between the two. This bridge is where transformation occurs. Not through external validation, but through internal realization. So, what if you allowed yourself to dwell in this space? To explore the questions that have no easy answers? What if you embraced the unknown, not as a threat, but as an invitation? Because in doing so, you may find that the fear of death was never about death itself, but about the loss of control, the loss of identity. But if identity is fluid, if consciousness continues, then there is nothing to lose, only something to gain. A broader perspective, a deeper connection, a more authentic existence. This is not a conclusion. It's the beginning of a journey into the depths of your own awareness. And here it is. Before we unravel the deeper truths, there are subtle hints, hidden phrases, and erased fragments that beckon you closer to a reality far beyond what you've been told. You've sensed it, haven't you? That subtle undercurrent beneath the surface of what you've been told? The fragments, the erased phrases, the shadows where forbidden truths linger. Before we dive deeper, these cryptic hints await your attention. The flow of energy beyond perception, the eternal whisper, concepts that mainstream records have tried to silence, What if these are not just fragments, but keys? Keys to mysteries that will soon unfold, transforming everything you think you know. Let's follow these breadcrumbs together. Science, in its relentless pursuit of knowledge, often draws clear lines. Matter is measurable, energy is quantifiable, and consciousness, well, that's left to philosophers, mystics, or sometimes dismissed as an illusion. But what if the boundaries between these realms are not as distinct as you have been led to believe? What if the unseen energy Einstein spoke of isn't just poetic metaphor, but a fundamental reality bridging physics and spirit? You've been taught that science is objective, that it deals in facts and formulas. But some of the greatest breakthroughs came from those willing to ask uncomfortable questions. Questions that tread dangerously close to what society calls spiritual or metaphysical. Einstein himself, despite his reputation as a hard-nosed physicist, occasionally touched on ideas that suggested the universe is more than just particles and forces. He hinted at a deeper flow, an energy beyond what our senses or instruments can detect. What if this flow is the very fabric that connects all things? Imagine a vast, invisible web of energy, threading through the cosmos and every living being. This is not just an abstract idea. Some ancient spiritual traditions have described similar concepts for millennia. Prana, chi, the breath of life. You might have heard these dismissed as superstition, but what if modern science and these age-old wisdoms are pointing to the same truth? The eternal whisper. That elusive phrase erased from official transcripts might be the missing link. A hidden current of consciousness that quietly guides, connects, and sustains all existence. What if this whisper is the subtle signal beneath all the noise, the source of intuition, the silent dialogue between soul and universe? This whisper has been quietly dismissed by mainstream science because it challenges the foundation of materialism, the belief that only what can be seen and measured is real. But what most people don't realize is that many phenomena defy easy measurement. Near-death experiences, collective consciousness, inexplicable moments of insight or healing. These hint at a reality where spirit and matter intertwine. As you consider this, ask yourself, how do you experience consciousness? Is it just a byproduct of brain activity? Or could it be something more, a ripple in that flow of energy beyond perception? What if your sense of self is not confined to the boundaries of your body, but extends into a vast, interconnected whole? This is the space where science and spirituality converge, a place where equations blur into experience, where the veil between what we know and what we sense begins to lift. You are standing on the threshold of this revelation, but to cross it requires letting go of old assumptions, of what is real and what is imagined. Consider this. Throughout history, many ideas that once seemed mystical or heretical have been validated by science. Heliocentrism, germ theory, quantum entanglement. Could it be that the flow of energy beyond perception, the eternal whisper, are next? Concepts too profound or subtle for public discourse, yet too important to ignore. What has been removed from public view? Why were transcripts censored? Who benefits from keeping these truths hidden? These are not idle questions. They strike at the core of power structures, scientific, religious, societal, that prefer certainty over mystery, control over awakening. You have become part of a select few who dare to listen to what others have silenced. This knowledge will reshape your understanding of life, death, and what lies beyond. It will challenge the narrative that death is an end, replacing it with a vision of continuity, an eternal flow where energy shifts but never ceases. But there is more. These breadcrumbs, phrases, and hints are just the surface. Beneath them lies a labyrinth of hidden wisdom, waiting for those ready to seek it. What other revelations lie buried in the intersection of science and spirit? What secrets have been removed, banned, or quietly erased to protect the comfortable illusions of mainstream reality? You are being invited to journey beyond, to question everything, to embrace the possibility that the universe is alive with meaning, whispering its eternal song beneath the static of everyday life. And when you listen closely, you may hear it, the whisper that never truly disappears. Here, on the edge of discovery, you will never be the same. Now, as we stand on the threshold of profound change, it's time to face the invitation that will alter everything you thought you knew about life and death. This knowledge isn't just information, it's an invitation, an opening of a door you didn't even know existed, one that leads beyond the boundaries of what you've been taught to accept as reality. Once you glimpse what lies behind, you will never see death or life the same way again. Imagine your deepest fears melting into understanding. The anxiety that once gripped you at the thought of an ending shifting into a quiet peace, a calm certainty that something beyond the veil is waiting. What if what you've always believed about the finality of life is just a shadow on the wall of a far greater, unseen truth? You are being called to awaken, to rise beyond the ordinary, to see through the veils that have kept you in darkness for so long. This is not a simple change of mind. It is a transformation of your very being. You will feel it ripple through your soul, shaking loose old chains, revealing new pathways. What will you do with this awakening? Will you embrace it? Or will you turn away, preferring the comfort of familiar illusions? The eternal whisper beckons. The flow beyond perception calls. But here's the question no one dares to ask. If death is not the end, then what?